My sister claimed she was pregnant to steal my fiancé, but now she's back begging for my help after he left her broken alone. Life was perfect, or at least that's what I thought. My fiancé Mark and I were weeks away from our wedding. We had been planning every detail meticulously, from the flowers to the catering menu. I could barely contain my excitement as I thought about walking down the aisle, surrounded by friends and family, to marry the man I loved. My sister Emma was going to be my maid of honour. Despite her often erratic behaviour and our tumultuous past, I believed we had reached a place of mutual respect and support. Emma had always been a bit of a wild card. Growing up, she craved attention and would go to extreme lengths to get it. Her antics were a constant source of stress for our family, but I loved her fiercely. She was my sister after all, and family meant everything to me. So when she offered to help with the wedding planning, I accepted her help without hesitation. One evening, as Mark and I were finalising the guest list, Emma barged into our apartment unannounced. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she looked as if she hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaking. I had never seen Emma so distressed. She was always the life of the party, never letting anything get her down. "What's wrong?" I asked, concern replacing my irritation at her sudden appearance. She looked between Mark and me, and I saw her hands trembling. "I'm pregnant," she announced. The room fell silent. I felt a mix of shock and confusion. Emma had never mentioned seeing anyone seriously. Before I could respond, she continued, "Mark, it's yours." It was as if the ground had been pulled from under me. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh and say it was a joke, but the look on her face told me she was deadly serious. I turned to Mark, hoping he would deny it, tell me it wasn't true, but the look on his face confirmed my worst fears. He was pale, his eyes wide with panic. "Emma, what are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice rising with hysteria. Emma burst into tears. "I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. We were both drunk and one thing led to another. I didn't mean for this to happen." I looked at Mark, waiting for him to refute her story, to tell me this was all some horrible misunderstanding, but he said nothing. He just stood there, frozen. "How could you do this?" I screamed at him. "How could you betray me like this?" Mark finally found his voice. "It was a mistake, a one-time thing. I swear it meant nothing. Please forgive me." Forgive him? How could I possibly forgive such a betrayal? My heart felt like it was being ripped apart. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and fled the apartment, tears streaming down my face. I drove aimlessly for hours, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me. My sister and my fiancé, the two people I trusted most, had shattered my world in an instant. When I finally returned home, I found Mark's belongings gone and a note on the kitchen table. He was leaving. He said he needed time to think, to sort things out, as if that could possibly fix the damage he had done. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. All I could do was replay that night over and over in my mind, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Emma tried calling me, but I couldn't bear to hear her voice. The pain was too raw, too overwhelming. Friends and family reached out, offering their support and sympathy, but their words felt hollow. How could they possibly understand what I was going through? How could anyone? I had lost not just my fiancé, but my sister as well. My heart was broken, and I didn't know how to put it back together. The wedding was called off, the invitations went unsent, and the beautiful white dress that had hung in my closet for months was returned. I had been looking forward to starting a new life with Mark, but now all I had was an empty apartment and a broken heart. The days turned into weeks, and the initial shock of the betrayal began to wear off, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. I took a leave of absence from work, unable to face my colleagues with the weight of my grief. Instead, I spent most days in bed, curtains drawn, isolating myself from the world. Friends tried to pull me out of my funk, but I was resolute in my misery. One evening, as I was mindlessly scrolling through old photos on my phone, I came across a picture of Mark and me at a friend's wedding. We looked so happy, so in love. My finger hovered over the delete button, but something inside me snapped. Deleting the photo wouldn't erase the pain. Instead, I threw my phone across the room and screamed into the emptiness. I had to do something to break free from this cycle of despair. The next morning I woke up with a renewed sense of determination. I couldn't let Mark and Emma's betrayal define me. I decided to pour my energy into something productive. I returned to work, diving headfirst into my projects. I spent long hours at the office, often staying late into the night. My colleagues noticed the change and tried to reach out, but I kept my distance. I wasn't ready to talk about what had happened. My work became my refuge, a way to escape the pain. I took on more responsibilities, volunteered for challenging assignments, and soon found myself climbing the corporate ladder. My hard work didn't go unnoticed. Within a year, I was promoted, and my career was flourishing. Yet, despite my professional success, there was still an emptiness inside me, a void that couldn't be filled with achievements and accolades. During this time, I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. They became my support system, helping me navigate the emotional minefield of my broken heart. We went out, travelled, and slowly but surely, I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been lost in the chaos of my relationship with Mark. I took up yoga, started painting, and even enrolled in a cooking class. These activities brought me a sense of peace and fulfillment I hadn't felt in a long time. But no matter how busy I kept myself, there were still moments when the pain would resurface. Nights were the hardest. Alone in my apartment, I would often find myself lying awake, replaying the events of that fateful night. I would wonder how different my life would be if Emma hadn't shown up, if Mark had stayed true to me. These thoughts were like ghosts, haunting me when I least expected it. One day, as I was cleaning out my closet, I stumbled upon a box of wedding mementos. Inside were the invitations, the guest list, and the veil I had planned to wear. I sat on the floor, surrounded by these relics of a future that never came to be, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to cry. I cried for the love I had lost, for the dreams that had been shattered, and for the person I used to be. After that cathartic release, something shifted inside me. I realized I had been holding on to the past, allowing it to dictate my present. It was time to let go. I gathered up the wedding items and took them to a donation centre. It felt like a symbolic gesture, a way to release the pain and make room for new possibilities. As I continued to heal, I started to open myself up to new experiences and relationships. I met someone special, someone who treated me with the kindness and respect I deserved. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and fear, but I was determined to move forward. I deserved happiness, and I was finally ready to embrace it. Life was starting to feel normal again, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. But just as I began to find my footing, a ghost from the past reappeared, threatening to upend the fragile balance I had worked so hard to achieve. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when I heard a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before opening it. When I did, I was stunned to see Emma standing there, drenched from the rain, looking more dishevelled than I had ever seen her. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she clutched a small, dirty child to her side. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I stared at her, my heart pounding. I didn't know what to say. Seeing her again brought back all the pain and anger I had worked so hard to overcome. But before I could respond, she started sobbing. "Please, I need your help," she pleaded. "He left us with nothing." The anger and resentment I felt towards Emma was still there, but seeing her so broken and desperate stirred something inside me. This was my sister, and despite everything, I couldn't turn her away. I stepped aside and let her in, unsure of what would come next. As Emma stepped into my apartment, the tension in the air was palpable. She looked around nervously, clutching the small child, her daughter, tightly. I hadn't seen my niece before. She must have been around 3 years old, with big, sad eyes and a mop of curly hair. Emma's dishevelled appearance contrasted sharply with the bright and comfortable space I had worked so hard to create for myself. I motioned for her to sit, and she sank into the couch, the weight of her situation evident in every movement. I handed her a towel and a cup of tea. She accepted both with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. The little girl, sensing her mother's distress, clung to Emma silently. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for the child. She was innocent in all of this, a victim of circumstances beyond her control. "I'm sorry for showing up like this," Emma began, her voice cracking. "I didn't know where else to go." I sat across from her, arms folded, trying to mask the turmoil inside me. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. Emma took a deep breath, looking at her daughter before speaking. "After you and Mark broke up, he stayed with me for a while. I thought we could make it work, for the baby's sake. But as soon as things got tough, he started to change. He became distant, cold. Eventually, he left, taking all our savings with him. I tried to manage on my own, but it's been so hard. I lost my job, and we were evicted from our apartment. I have nowhere else to turn." Her words stirred a mix of emotions in me. Anger, yes, but also a profound sadness for the broken person sitting before me. Despite everything, she was still my sister. I looked at the little girl, who was now playing quietly with a toy I had forgotten was tucked under the coffee table. She deserved better than this. "What's her name?" I asked, nodding towards the child. "Lily," Emma replied, a small smile breaking through her tears. "She's my world." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing thoughts. "Emma, I'm still angry with you. You hurt me in ways I can't even begin to describe. But Lily, she's innocent. She doesn't deserve to suffer because of our mistakes." Emma nodded, tears flowing freely now. "I know, and I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you. I was stupid and selfish, but please, I need your help. Lily needs your help." The room fell silent, save for the soft sounds of Lily playing. I could see the desperation in Emma's eyes, and despite the pain she had caused me, I couldn't ignore her plea. I knew I had to do something, not for Emma, but for Lily. "You can stay here for a while," I said finally. "But there will be boundaries. You need to find a job and start getting back on your feet. I'll help you, but I won't let you take advantage of me again." Emma nodded vigorously, relief washing over her face. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I promise I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, the apartment's atmosphere was a mix of tension and cautious optimism. Emma worked hard to rebuild her life, taking on any job she could find. She was determined to prove she had changed, not just to me, but to herself. Meanwhile, I found myself growing attached to Lily. She was a bright, sweet child who had been through so much in her short life. We spent time together, reading stories, drawing pictures, and I began to see her as a symbol of hope and resilience. Despite the progress, there were still moments of doubt and conflict. Emma and I had many difficult conversations, addressing the past and our painful history. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for both of us to heal. I set clear boundaries, ensuring that, while I was there to help, I wouldn't allow myself to be hurt again. One evening, as Lily was asleep and Emma and I were sitting on the couch, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know how truly sorry I am. I've lost so much, but losing you was the hardest. I don't expect us to go back to the way things were, but I hope we can find a way to move forward." I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. It was a long road, but maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to rebuild our relationship. "I'm willing to try," I said softly, "for Lily's sake and for ours." As Emma smiled through her tears, I felt a small flicker of hope. It wasn't a perfect solution, and there were still many challenges ahead, but it was a start. We were both committed to healing and rebuilding, and that was enough for now. But as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Our past was full of pain and betrayal, but the future was unwritten. It was up to us to shape it, and I was determined to make it a better one for all of us. As weeks turned into months, our new arrangement began to feel almost normal. Emma had found a steady job as a receptionist at a local clinic, and Lily had started attending a nearby preschool. Our apartment, once a haven for my solitude, was now filled with laughter, toys, and the comforting hum of family life. Despite the lingering tension between Emma and me, we had developed a tentative truce, bonded by our mutual love for Lily. One Saturday morning, as I was making breakfast, Emma approached me with a look of determination mixed with fear. I got a call from Mark, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart skipped a beat. The mere mention of his name was enough to send a shiver down my spine. What does he want? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He wants to see Lily, Emma replied, her eyes filled with worry. He says he wants to be a part of her life now. I don't know what to do. He hurt us so much, but he's still her father. I felt a surge of anger. Mark had abandoned them when they needed him most, and now he wanted to waltz back into their lives as if nothing had happened. It was infuriating. But as I looked at Lily, who was happily drawing at the kitchen table, I knew this wasn't a decision to be made lightly. She deserved to know her father, but not at the cost of her safety and well-being. We need to think this through carefully, I said finally. Lily's happiness and stability come first. If Mark wants to be in her life, he needs to prove he's changed. He can't just expect to walk back in without earning our trust. Emma nodded, relief evident on her face. You're right. I won't let him hurt her, but I think we should give him a chance, for Lily's sake. We'll set strict boundaries and take things slowly. Over the next few weeks, we arranged supervised visits for Mark and Lily. I was wary, watching Mark closely during these interactions. To my surprise, he seemed genuinely remorseful and eager to make amends. He was patient with Lily, who was initially hesitant but gradually warmed up to him. It was clear he regretted his past actions and wanted to make things right. As Mark's visits became more regular, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Seeing him with Lily, being the father she deserved, was bittersweet. I was happy for her, but it also brought back painful memories of our shattered relationship. However, I knew this wasn't about me. It was about giving Lily the best possible future. One evening, after a particularly pleasant visit, Mark asked if he could speak to me alone. We stepped out onto the balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief from the day's heat. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Mark began, looking down at his hands. I made terrible mistakes, and I hurt you more than I can ever make up for, but I want you to know how sorry I am. I'm trying to be better for Lily and for myself. I looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. Mark, it's not just about apologies. It's about actions. You hurt Emma and me deeply, but more importantly, you abandoned your daughter. If you truly want to be in her life, you have to show us that you've changed. He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. As Mark continued to prove his commitment, Emma and I slowly began to rebuild our relationship with him. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt and pain, but we were all working towards a common goal: Lily's happiness. She was thriving with both her parents in her life, and that was all that mattered. Despite the progress, there were still challenges. One evening, Emma and I had a heated argument about Mark's increasing involvement. She wanted to give him more leeway, while I remained cautious. Our voices rose, old wounds resurfacing, until Lily appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't fight," she sobbed. "I don't want you to go away." Her words were a stark reminder of the impact our actions had on her. Emma and I immediately stopped, embracing Lily and assuring her that we would work things out. It was a humbling moment, reinforcing our commitment to put Lily's needs above our own. Over time, our efforts paid off. Mark continued to be a positive presence in Lily's life, and Emma and I found a new balance in our relationship. We still had our disagreements, but we were learning to communicate better, to understand and respect each other's perspectives. One sunny afternoon, as we watched Lily playing in the park, Emma turned to me with a smile. "Thank you," she said softly, "for giving me and Mark a chance to make things right, for being there for Lily. I don't know what we would have done without you." I smiled back, feeling a sense of peace. "We're family, Emma, and family means we stick together no matter what." As we sat there, watching Lily's laughter fill the air, I realized how far we had come. The road had been long and painful, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient. Our bond, once fractured by betrayal, had been rebuilt on a foundation of forgiveness and love. In the end, we were not just survivors of our past, but architects of our future. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful, ready to embrace whatever came next. Thank you for reading our story. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to rebuild a relationship after such deep betrayal? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences.